Morning, Tony. I want to thank you for being willing to do this interview with the Foundation of Unity. And Tony, you're one of the directors of the Foundation of Unity. You studied economics at Columbia University. You're a hedge fund analyst with ValQuest Capital. And you run the website Market Harmonics that shows the harmony of movement between people in the financial markets. So thank you for inviting us into your home to do this interview. And would you like to ask, what is your personal connection or experience with Unity?
Well, first, Jim, thanks for the opportunity to be interviewed. In terms of my personal experience with Unity, I would say that for me it was just the basic discovery of the whole idea of Unity. Unity from the point of view of a greater source, if you will, from which we all spring, and that there's a direct connection that we have to that source. And if one takes it from the premise that one is personally connected to a greater source, then it assumes that so is everyone else. And so that's, for me, a very core belief, and something that I put in practice in terms of my own interactions on a personal level with people, part of my own personal growth, and how I apply these ideas to business.
Was there a point of experience or a process that you went through to come to that awareness of your connection with something greater than just yourself, that you felt everyone was connected with?
Well, I think, as happens with most people when they make substantive, changes in their life, or in particular their life philosophy, it usually, is born out of some kind of conflict that came beforehand. And, so for me, I just personally, professionally, was not particularly happy with the way things were, at that time. And so that, provided motivation for wanting, to seek out answers and to, kind of enlarge, my understanding of myself, And so in the course of doing that, and reading and studying a lot of different people's philosophies and so on, I came to evolve this idea of a connection, to a greater, spiritual. At least that's the way that I characterize it, a greater spiritual, force that exists. People can debate what it is, how you call it, but the bottom line is that, I think in order to embrace that idea, one can simply accept, its existence, without trying to clothe it in any particular way.
How does the concept, the idea of unity, play out in your professional life?
It plays out, it plays out in my professional life in a very direct way. When I created Market Harmonics, the basic idea of that was to offer a service that looked at the market from a different perspective, through a form of analysis called the Elliott wave, which was reintroduced and popularized by a fellow by the name of Robert Precter.
Tell me a little bit more about the Elliott wave.
Yeah. The Elliott wave,
and how it's unifying.
Okay, I'll get to that. The Elliott wave is basically a form of market movement, a pattern of market movement that occurs because of the fact that markets are not random. The market movements are not random, contrary to what some have put forward, but are basically driven by changes in emotional behaviors among market participants. And what the Elliott wave principle is basically is a graphical representation on a stock chart that is interpreted from the movement of prices. Right. The basic pattern is a five-wave pattern of. In an advancing market, is a move up that we will call wave one, or a move down, which is wave two, or a free advance, which tends to be the largest move in the advance. a contracting advance in wave 4, and a culminating advancement we call wave 5. That's followed by a 3-wave correction pattern that we call A, B, and C.
What drives that pattern?
Well, what drives that pattern is emotion, as I was saying a moment ago. One of the things that we find in sentiment analysis, which is, excuse me, my particular area of specialization, is that people tend to operate between, polarities of optimism and pessimism. And whenever these reach extremes, the movement tends to give way to its opposite. So people have been very, bearish or, negative on the market for a long time. Eventually, there'll be a critical mass in which people start feeling more positive about the market, and reverse. One key component of the Elliott wave principle, besides the market form part of it, which is the first aspect, and which is part of the unifying or tie-in, with unity, as I'll get to in a moment, is the incorporation of Fibonacci mathematics into the wave principle. In particular, well, there's two aspects of Fibonacci mathematics which are key in both the wave principle and in this idea of unity. One is what we would call the golden ratio. All right, the golden ratio is a ratio that is based on, well, numerically it's 1 to 0.618. Now, the reason that this is significant is that in terms of the actual patterns, Elliott, referred to these patterns as waves. More recently, because of the work by the mathematician Mandelbrot, these patterns have come to be called fractals. All right, fractals are basically forms that are irregularly shaped, and the formation of these fractals is based on a pattern of scaling. Right. Now, one of the things that we find in the universe and different elements of the universe, right, is the fact that this scaling process will take place according to this ratio, this Fibonacci ratio. So, for example, just to relate it to things that we can understand, this kind of the process underlies, the formation, say, of the branching of trees. If you look at the Earth, say from an elevated perspective, say like from the space shuttle, for example, and if you're looking at a coastline, it'll look like a fractal form.
And that follows that same ratio?
It follows. It tends to follow that same ratio. Also, the configuration of the human body, for example, reflects this golden ratio. The other part of the Fibonacci mathematics is what's called the Fibonacci number sequence, right? Where the numbers in the sequence are also related by this golden ratio. All right, so that in terms of like branching, I mean, you have a tree, right? The tree has a branch. That branch will, branch into smaller branches and leaves. And if you look at the leaf internally, there's also a branching that takes place. So I mean, this is an example of a fractal, that is scaling according to this Fibonacci number sequence and this golden ratio. So even at the cosmic level, this idea of a spiraling, universe is also a reflection of this same concept. To put it in terms of the markets, which is my area of expertise.
Yeah, if you could connect emotion to the markets to this golden ratio, which is what you really covered here.
Right.
Just as far as its behavior following this pattern. That would be just kind of unify it all, right, in a moment.
Sure.
That'd be great.
Sure. Okay. Well, again, let's remember that the Elliott wave patterns are representations, or interpretations of movement of prices, you know, let's say in a particular stock index. All right, so that these patterns are basically, you know, following a very, you know, similar type of scale, right, in how they progress. So that it would make perfect sense that, you know, why should people, you know, why wouldn't people manifest the same kind of behavior as is being expressed on a stock chart, you know, in terms of the form and shape of how, you know, the stock market is moving. You know, it would make perfect sense, you know, for that to happen when you consider that, you know, this kind of movement is so, you know, so much permeates, you know, the universe, you know, that we live in. My view is that I think the reason that this happens and why there's a connection, you know, to unity is because, you know, assuming that we all stem from the same, you know, universal source that is expressing itself in various forms, including as you and me, you know, that it would seek, you know, a way to do it where, you know, there's a commonality that's being reflected amongst all these different, you know, forms. So I think, you know, there's a definite tie into unity right there.
Thank you very much, Tony. If we can just go to the next question as well, what do you see as your contribution to unity?
Well, I think, you know, one, you know, is the participation with the, you know, with the foundation's work, and, you know, basically continuing the work, you know, that I've been doing with market harmonics and trying to bring, you know, these ideas forward.
Okay, thank you very much. And what do you see as the future of unity?
Well, I hope the future is, and I think there's an inevitability, you know, that people will come to embrace, you know, you know, this idea, you know, of us being connected to a greater source. I mean, I think in our dealings between each other, you know, on an individual level and on a global scale, it would be a lot more peaceful world if people, you know, would begin to see, you know, that connection, and they'd be less inclined to not trust each other, or, you know, or to feel that the only way to resolve things is, you know, by engaging in conflict.
Okay, thank you. And who would you like to see interviewed to hear their perspective on unity?
I would say, in terms of expounding on, you know, this thesis of the LA wave principle and Socionomics, which is a new social science that uses the wave principle as part of its premise. Definitely somebody like Robert Precter, who was the founder of that, and who, as I said earlier, was the guy who introduced or reintroduced the wave principle. In terms of people who I think are really on a spiritual level, who really have it right in terms of unity, would be people like Dr. Wayne Dyer, who I'm a huge fan of, as well as Deepak Chopra, who has done a lot of work in terms of promoting this idea of unity and peace. And so these are three people that I think you know, I'd love to see interviewed for the foundation.
Well, Tony, thank you very much for your time and insight and expertise and sharing with us this morning.
Thank you. Very happy to.